Hello and welcome to Unit 1, Part 1. My name is Mr. Bell, and today we're going to talk about completing tables of two variable equations. We're going to plot some points on a coordinate plane and talk about the different parts and vocabulary that go along with that. And we're also going to evaluate some expressions by plugging in given values. Let's talk about some key features and vocabulary first. On the left here, we have what's called a table of values. It consists of x values, which is the domain, and y values, which is the range. You have an equation at the top that reads y is equal to 3x plus 1. Of course, x and y are the variables. The equal sign makes it an equation. And this is a standard XY coordinate plane. Recall that the x-axis is the horizontal one and the vertical axis is the y-axis. That being said, let's get started with completing the table. What we're going to do is take each value of the domain, plug it in for its value, plug x in for x into the equation, and work it out and solve for a corresponding y value. Once we have our x and y, we know our left and right shift on the graph and our up and down shift, and we can plot the point. So let's try that real quick. Notice here at the bottom, I've rewritten my original equation, except this time I've put a parentheses where there was an x. That's because I am going to take that x value, that input value, that domain value, and I am going to substitute it in place of the x in this original equation here. So since our x value is a -2, I'm going to plug that in, and now I can simplify this equation. Y is equal to 3 times -2, which is -6 plus 1, and then -6 plus 1 gives me a y value of -5. Now I'm going to repeat this process for the remaining points. The second input value on my table is -1, so I'm going to substitute that in place of x. 3 times -1 is -3, and -3 plus 1 gives me a value of -2. Third value is 0. Plug in a 0 in for x. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. Fourth value is a +1, so in place of the x, I plug in a +1. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. My fifth value is a 2, so I'm going to substitute a 2 in. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. And my last value is a 3 for the domain, so I'm going to input that value in for x. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. Now I've completed my table of values, and now I'm able to graph them. And recall, to graph a point, you have to remember that it's a coordinate. It has an x and a y value. Of course, the x is the left and right, the y is the vertical, the up or down, and you begin plotting the point at the origin, which is 0, 0, right in the middle. So when I start plotting these points, I'll change the color and plot them in red. My first point is -2, -5. That means I need to go left 2 for the x component and down 5 for the y component. So that leaves me a point left 2 and down 5. On to the second point. That was the first point. The second point is left 1 and down 2, -1, -2. The third point is 0, means I don't go left or right any, but I need to go up 1 for the y value. 1, 4, I'll go right 1 and up 4. 2, 7, I go right 2 and up 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the last point is right 3 and up 10. If you notice, these points, when graphed, form a straight line. If I was to draw a line, which it would be very difficult on the iPad, but it would be a linear function because the values have a constant rate of change. In this part of the video, we're going to evaluate or plug in values for specific variables. And if you notice, I have A is -2, B is equal to +5, and C is equal to 1/3. What I'm going to do when I evaluate is I have some kind of expression with different operations. I need to plug in or substitute that value in place of the particular or specific letter. I like to use parentheses when I'm doing this. So this number 1 says A times b squared times c. And I know it's multiplication because there is no addition or subtraction sign between them. In place of the a, I'm going to substitute a -2. In place of the b, I'm going to substitute a 5. In place of the c, I'm going to substitute a 1/3. When I evaluate this expression, I get a result of -50 over 3, which if you converted that to a decimal, it would be -16.7. I would take either one of those. Number 2 says 2 times the value of a plus 3 times the value of b to the 3rd power. Now I'm going to plug in or substitute those values. A is -2, and in place of the b, I'm going to plug in 5 from my values at the top that were given to me. 2 times -2 is -4. 3 times 5 to the 3rd power. 5 to the 3rd power is 125. 125 times 3 is 375. And then 375 minus 4, or -4 plus 375, is 371. And then the last one, I'll go ahead and set up my expression except with the parentheses everywhere there's a letter. And now I'll substitute the values in. A is a -2, B is a 5, B is a 5, and C is a 1/3. And now I'm going to evaluate this expression and get a result of -17 over 5. Or if I converted that to a decimal, it would be -3.4. All right, thanks for watching. Hope this helps.